Muy bien, ahora sí,
Okay,
muy buenos días.
good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to have you here this morning. My name is Maria Lucia Fernandez, and I will be with you during this day. The Chamber of Commerce welcome you to Clusters and Shared Value Forum, Drivers of Prosperity. We want to greet Mr. Michael Proctor, professor of Harvard University and president of the Institute for Strategy and Competitiveness from Harvard School at the same university. Mr. Santiago Rojas, Ministry of Industry and Tourism and Commerce, Edgar Coster, and Mines and Energy, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Mrs. Monica de Grave, of course, the members of the directive boards, all the company leaders, members of the government, and especially in the country, both in public and private sectors. We are going to learn about the strategies, the stance we kicked off 2 years ago, and with shared value and cluster initiatives in order to foster productivity, regional prosperity, and in order to help the entrepreneurs with their dreams. That cluster and shared value are Michael Porter is going to talk about this, which is going to analyze different topics around this area, and is going to tell us about things we can use in order to strengthen a strategy. The CEO of Chamber of Commerce, Monica Grace, and Professor Michael Porter are going to grant the first Chair Value Award that recognizes the initiative that contribute in economic and social areas from successful startup. At the end of the day, the ambassador of Colombia in Cuba, Mr. Lemos, is going to talk about peace and reconciliation as the fundamentals in order to build a more competitive and prosperous society. In order to open this forum, we are going to invite the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Tourism, Mr. Santiago Rojas, which is going to formally install this event. Good morning. When you see the number of people attending this type of forum, you realize that the interest related to competitivity in the country is huge. Thanks to Monica de Grave, the Chamber of Commerce of Bogota, for inviting me to open this forum. I want to pass my greeting to Michael Porter, and all the people and staff that have really helped with this topic of company and social development in the country. Welcome all of you. As I said earlier, the amount of people this morning showed the interest level regarding competitivity, and this is something that we start seeing 20 years ago in the administration of Mr. Gaviria. And we have Luis Alberto Moreno, the Ministry of Economic Development, and the Ministry Juan Manuel Santos. We start talking about competitivity at regional level. We start talking about clusters and start thinking about everything in here. So we start seeing the big interest, the growing interest in public actions in regional projects. We in Colombia are in a middle position regarding competitivity in the world, and we didn't have really make this quantitative leap. So this is due to maybe new competitive strategies we are changing from time to time, and competitivity requires really a continuous actions and not really this type of shifting every 4 years in order to rethink what the country should do. Okay, despite of this position in the middle of the table, we need to acknowledge this the country has been working lately in this type of topics, and somehow we can say that Colombia is a different country. It's a country that is providing opportunities to entrepreneurs in order to develop and be more successful. And this effort of course, should be supported by the government at both local and national level, entrepreneurs, different unions and associations, chamber of commerce, the academy. If we are not really working as a team, we are going to have all those four really going to the drain. So we need to see that all our countries are really moving faster. So from a government perspective, what do we think about competitivity? When we talk about competitivity, you may be confused with different areas. People talk about problems in companies as competitivity, lack of highways as competitivity. So how can we tackle or address this topic in an integral way? Nowadays, when we are talking about competitivity or company development, you need to consider always four pillars. For pillars, you need to really move in an articulate and simultaneous fashion. First of all, this is something related to company productivity. Companies are responsible to improve productivity with the support of government. The second pillar is related to regional development, which is the main purpose of this firm. Everything related to regional clusters and sectors of development, it's crucial. The third pillar, it's related to companies and economy internationalization, and the fourth pillar it's competitivity at country level. Is where entrepreneurs say that I'm ready to be productive and competitive, but you need to set the ground. You need to really put the conditions so I'm not going to be in disadvantage regarding the international players. So, as I said earlier, the first one, the responsibility is namely of the entrepreneur, belongs to the entrepreneur. You wake up in the morning thinking on how can be more productive using less resources. And we have the mission of the entrepreneur that needs to be supported by the government. How are we providing support nowadays? First of all, if an entrepreneur wants to be modern, if they want to purchase equipment or latest technologies, what do they need? First of all, credit in good conditions, and we are using bank index as a tool in order to improve the quality, the credit access. Last February, we launched the second line of PIPE, which is a productive program, and we make 1 billion pesos available, and in 45 days, entrepreneurs use this credit. What does it mean? The entrepreneurs are really thinking about procuring new equipment, new technology, but they need the support of the government and the bank to have a longer terms credit in order to be able to invest in their businesses. Second, or it's not to charge by the capital assets they are buying. So we try to reduce taxes and this type of goods. So we need to think deeply about what taxes to charge or not to charge regarding the value-added tax, because the government shouldn't charge this for these goods when the entrepreneurs want to invest in their own company. Second, it's related to innovation. We are talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. We have good news. We have money for innovation. We have 1 billion pesos a year coming from royalties. It's a 10%, and we have 1 billion pesos available in tax benefits, and around 1 billion around different calls from SENA and other public entities fostering innovation. So the point here, the problem is the use of the resources. How can we ensure that this billion pesos could be devoted to innovation in the companies? We need to shift our mindset somehow, because we need to be in touch with the entrepreneurs to really focus on important projects. And when we talk about benefit, return benefit, we need to structure these mechanisms We asked for the budget approved, and it was 100,000 million pesos for more than 20 companies, and we have the calls that are made by Impulse and Conciencia that are working now and are really supporting the company sector. Third pillar, it's about human capital. We are aware that if we want to be productive, we need to have a well-trained human capital, everything related to education, and formalization is a fourth pillar. When half of the companies are informal, we are really not going to be successful because people is not available to access formal jobs. So those four pillars are the main areas we are focusing on, and the government it's really enforced to support reducing taxes or not charging taxes, really fostering human capital and education in order to have more productive companies in the country. And a company that is really struggling for being more productive belongs to accountants, and we have a second pillar that is going to be addressed by Professor Porter. Companies belong to a regional context, to a sector, so we need to start looking at ways to connect the companies. If we use a regional cluster, for example, how can we really look for productive change? How big companies can develop their suppliers and vendors in order to supply the services and goods they're required? How can we connect this with infrastructure and construction, mining and energy? How can we connect all of these? How we can connect the companies with public companies? We require management and big management effort at regional level. This is something you are going to review here. How this cluster approach, how to connect the companies with the same vision. How can this can help us to strengthen productivity? The third pillar is internationalization. We are a country that has a successful economic model that started 20 years ago that have reduced poverty, reduced inequity, but we are still kind of closed country, and we are depending on mining and energy resources. We have low per capita exports, and we need to really work harder in order to connect these countries with the world, with free trading agreements as a tool to allow these connections. And we need to really work harder to really focus on the main areas we are dealing in the government. So we need to have a competitive company, part of a regional context, a strong cluster that really works and it's connected to the world. Required country connectivity. That's when entrepreneurs say you need to set the ground. We are not going to be a good player against a foreign player that is selling without VAT or that are smuggling goods to the country, or if I have to pay more utility service or transportation, or if maybe logistics and freight times are higher compared to my competitors. So we need to tackle those issues regarding infrastructure and reducing the cost of utility service. We need to focus on steady macroeconomic indicators. Fortunately, we have those here in Colombia, which allow you to plan with an inflation less than 3%. If all those elements and the context are really helping the national competitivity through 109 actions. The idea of this presentation was to give you an overview of the action lines we have at the government and congratulate the Chamber of Commerce for this initiative to think about the development of clusters and shared value vision, which is fundamental for a region like Bogota and Cundinamarca. Fort should be big and should be developed in the regions. We are not going to enforce clusters. And this is in the hands of entrepreneurs of the region, and it's the responsibility of the government and different institutions to support and really bet on this type of organization at Formula for the regional development. It was my welcome greeting. Thank you, Monica, for this invitation, and welcome to this interesting event.
Minister, thank you very much. And next, we'll leave you with the Executive President of the Chamber of Commerce of Bogota, Dr. Monica Grave.
Good morning to you all. And I always say, welcome to your house. Welcome to the Entrepreneurs House of Bogota. I would like to thank especially to the Board of Directors of the Chamber that has believed in this new model of clusters and has a vice presidency to support this model of clusters and shared value. And greet and welcome Professor Porter. And what we're going to learn today is going to be to have no value for what we're going to have a lot of value to what we're going to have in the Chamber of Commerce. To Claudia Milena that has organized this seminar, and to all of you, welcome. Now I leave the floor to Professor Porter. That was a greeting from Ms. Monica Grave, President of the Chamber of Commerce of Bogota. Next, Professor Michael Porter is going to give the conference Clusters and Shared Value, Denominators of Competitiveness. Well, the screens fell down. We're going to show a video with a profile and a brief overview of our international guest, Dr. Michael Porter. Now we're going to see the video and his resume. Michael Porter is the worldwide authority in matter of competitiveness, entrepreneurial strategy, and shared value. He is president of the Institute of Strategy and Competitiveness of the School of Business of the Harvard University. He has the highest title that is granted by the University of Harvard to its teachers. Professor Porter is author of 18 books and more than 120 academic articles. He has received 12 doctorates honoris causa and worldwide awards like Wallace Prize in Economics, the Adam Smith Award, and the first Lifetime Achievement Award from the Department of Commerce of the United States. He is an aerospace engineer from the University of Princeton, an MBA from the School of Business of Harvard, and PhD in Economics of the same university. Well, now welcome our international guest, Dr. Michael Porter.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so very happy to be in Colombia today and in Bogota here at this incredible event. I'm so honored that so many of you are here. So I have a heavy responsibility to make this morning very important for all of us. I have been coming now to Colombia personally for about 10 years. I remember my first actual personal visit was in 2005, and it was really a moment of transformation. There'd been progress in Colombia on competitiveness issues for some decades, really starting in the 90s. Michael Fairbanks, who I worked with, really led that work here with a number of presidents. But we had a new opportunity, I think, when President Uribe took office in 2005, to try to change the game. And in particular, that was the moment at which really the private sector became fundamentally involved in the competitiveness of the country, took responsibility for the competitiveness of the country and of the regions in which they were operating. the national system of competitiveness was created. The Private Sector Council on Competitiveness was created as a result of that meeting in Cartagena in 2005. I think the country since then has continued to make steady progress. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of issues, as the minister said a minute ago. There's much work to be done here on competitiveness, but I think I'm personally very, very proud of the progress that's been made. Given the history, given the circumstances, given the violence, given the lack of security, given the many, many challenges this country has faced, really quite remarkable how much progress has been made. But of course, as the minister also said, competitiveness is a never-ending challenge. You always have to keep raising the bar. The goal, of course, is to improve the standard of living of citizens in this country, to improve the capacity of all you companies to be competitive, not just inside the country, but outside, in the region and in the world. It's a never-ending challenge. And countries all over the world are raising the bar. They're getting better. They're working on their problems. They're improving their business environment. They're improving their regulations. So if you just stand still, of course, you fall behind. I think the fact that this country has been able to progress steadily, I think, is a sign that you're not just standing still. We're moving. But I think this session is a reflection of the fact that I think we have an opportunity and a necessity to move faster. And ultimately, I think the private sector is going to have to play a major role in that process. While there's a lot of work still needs to be done at the national level in improving the business conditions and improving the national laws that really affect the business environment across the whole country, really the fundamental challenge today is increasingly not national, it's actually at the regional level. So, in the early days, it was important to get the broad national conditions right. A lot has changed. Now it's coming down to more the microeconomic level. Really raising the capacity of companies in Colombia and improving the business environment and the clusters at the regional level. This, I think, is the fundamental challenge today. And the reason I'm here is I think the Bogota Chamber, under President Monica de Grief, is a leader in driving that agenda. And I'm here because I want to show my support and excitement about what this chamber is doing with all of you. And the purpose of my session today is to give you really some of what we're learning about how to go forward in this area. How to go forward on cluster development. How to go forward on actually having companies play a greater and greater role in driving the prosperity and development of the country. You know, in the old days, we used to think that country success was really driven by government. The traditional model was business did its business, and government's job was to do all the national competitiveness, economic development. That was government's job. We've now learned that that's not right. Government has profoundly important roles to play in creating the right environment, but ultimately competitiveness rests in the people in this room. It's you that are competitive, not Colombia that's competitive. It's your ability to be productive and innovative and efficient that is going to really drive this country. And we've also learned that not only do businesses have a profound influence on the economic success of a country, But increasingly we see that the private sector has a profound influence on also the social development of the country. And the ability to get the private sector engaged in this profound way, not just nationally, but also at the regional level, which is where the rubber meets the road, where the real action takes place, is the profound challenge that Colombia faces, but many other countries face. So what I'd like to do today is really talk about three topics in order to provide some of the concepts and ideas that hopefully will be able to guide all of you as you proceed to raise your competitiveness. And some of the concepts and ideas that hopefully will guide the Chamber as it continues to play a more and more active and engaged role with the private sector in this greater Bogota region. And for those of you here from government, hopefully some of the key ideas that will allow government to actually play a more positive and more effective role in enhancing competitiveness. So I'm hoping to cover really three topics this morning, which is, I hope, not too ambitious, but we have very few occasions like this where we can come together and talk. So I want to use this as much as we can. First topic I'd like to talk about is companies and company strategy. Got a lot of companies in the room. The competitiveness of Colombia is going to be determined by the competitiveness of the companies of Colombia. You can't have a competitive economy if you don't have competitive companies. It all starts with companies. Companies are the center of the universe of competitiveness. And so I'd like to sort of introduce our session this morning by talking a little bit about company strategy. Because I think that ultimately we have to translate all these things that we're doing into a winning strategy that allows every one of these companies in the room, all of you, to actually raise your competitiveness. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think we need to remember some of those critical ideas about strategy in order to really understand the role of the business environment, to understand the role of clusters, and to put the idea of shared value in perspective. So we'll first talk a little bit about company strategy. Not an exhaustive discussion. We could spend all day, all week on this topic. This is what I do. I work at companies all over the world to try to help them win. Raise the bar, be more competitive, be more differentiated, be more productive, be more focused. We've got to all, though, have a shared understanding of that, and all of you in this room in companies have to be doing that and trying to get better. But what we'll also do is talk about how you can do a lot within the company to become more competitive and more productive and have a better strategy. But you can do it much better if you have a cluster around you. If you have a cluster that has the assets and the institutions and the supplier base that will enable you as a company to really raise yourself to a whole new level of competitiveness. And we have now very powerful data that shows that if you can build strong clusters, that's where the innovation comes from. That's where the rapid productivity growth comes from. That's where the new business formation, the formation of new companies comes from. It's a part of it is what we do inside the company by ourselves, but increasingly we're learning that a lot of company success has to do with being in a strong cluster. You know, the fact that Apple is in Silicon Valley is a big advantage for Apple. If Apple was sitting here, they'd have a lot less assets with which to build a world-class company and world-class products and world-class technology and a world-class kind of global position for that company. Location, the cluster matters. So while our first job as a company is to run the company really well, increasingly we're starting to understand that we got to pay attention to the cluster around us if we really want to be world-class. And I think this notion of clusters is starting to become much more understood in Columbia and a little maybe less controversial. I think traditionally many people thought that clusters were about top-down government direction of the economy, and it couldn't be more wrong. That's not what clusters are. That's old-style industrial policy where government tries to run the economy. Doesn't work, never worked, never will work. Clusters are something different. Clusters are bottoms up. Clusters are about getting businesses and institutions kind of collaborating to improve the business environment in a particular field. Bottoms up. All clusters are good. You don't pick one over the other. All clusters are good. Every one of you is in a cluster. It may be a weak cluster, it may be a strong cluster. But what we're learning is that if you can strengthen the cluster around you, this is going to allow you to be much more productive. I'll tell you, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So that's the second topic. It all starts with companies and how you compete and how you think about competition. But having that strong cluster gives you tremendous power to raise your standard. And then that leads to this topic called shared value, which is a way of broadening the understanding in business of the opportunities we have in business to actually improve profit and growth. By moving beyond a narrow view that we only deal with economic things, but also recognizing in business that we can have a profound impact on the broader society, on the broader problems of the society, like the environment, like health, like housing, like rural poverty. We in business can have a profound impact not just on our narrow economic agenda, but also on the broader societal agenda in the communities in which we operate. And what we're learning is that it's those societal impacts and opportunities that actually represent the greatest growth opportunity in business. So I'd like to kind of wrap up this morning's session talking about shared value, but we'll see that these three things all come together. They all come together, and hopefully we'll all have kind of this broader understanding of why are we doing these things? Where does this fit? And then how can each of you as individual companies in your own cluster think about how to address this topic? There's no formula. Every company is going to be different. Every cluster is different. And we have to learn how to look at these things in this new way. And I think what I see around the world is tremendous energy and progress taking place where we can kind of harness this kind of thinking in moving ahead. And where fundamentally the private sector, you, really take active responsibility because of the opportunity for your businesses rather than think that it's somebody else's job. You know, the minister can't do this. All the ministers, if we had all of them here, they couldn't do it. If President Santos was here, who is an old friend, you know, him and all the ministers couldn't do it. Ultimately, this is going to succeed based on you, based on what happens on the ground in the private sector. But we have some powerful ideas here that can help us drive change and progress much faster and make our companies grow faster, make our businesses more profitable, and raise that standard of living and raise the level of wages that we can sustain in this country. So I think we have an exciting opportunity. Let's talk a little bit about these topics, recognizing the time is short. This presentation will be posted and made available to all of you. There is extensive additional material and videos and all kinds of stuff on all of these topics that you can get access to through our website at Harvard, at the Business School. We have this, I think this is my 6th or 7th visit to Columbia in the last decade. I am an honorary Columbian at this point. I love it here. I admire the grit, the determination with which this country moves forward, despite all the complexities. You know, we're still negotiating peace settlements, but yet we got to move forward. We can't wait. And I admire this, and so I view this as part of a long-term relationship that we are going to have, and hopefully all of you are going to do this. We already have one case study on Columbia that we teach at Harvard Business School on this kind of competitiveness transformation. This is the next case. We're talking about the next case today that we will write, hopefully soon, and spread around the world. You'd be surprised how many people actually studied the Columbia case already in terms of the transformation and over the last decade. But I think we can write another case. So that case is going to start with companies, and it's going to start with company strategy. So how do we think about company strategy? Well, I suspect that many of you are familiar with the key ideas in strategy, but I think the first fundamental idea in strategy is that when you're thinking about your company, you've got to think about your competitive question the right way. Now, many companies, when they think about strategy, they think in terms of how do I be the best? How do I be the best bank? How do I be the best toothpaste company? How do I be the best IT vendor? Many companies sort of think in terms of strategy, that strategy is being the best. And so therefore I have to figure out how to be the best. I have to figure out the best product. I have to figure out the best supply chain. I have to figure out the best marketing. I have to figure out the best distribution system. And if I can figure out the best way to compete in my industry, then I will succeed. That's success. Okay? Now, what's the problem with that thinking? The problem with that thinking is that if we look at all the industries, and I've had the privilege of working in hundreds of them at this point, if we look at industries, it turns out there is no best. There is no best. There is no best auto company. There's lots of good auto companies because there's lots of different needs and lots of different consumers, and they want different things. There's not one way to deliver value as an auto company. And if we try to be the best and we think that there's only one way to compete, what's going to happen is we are going to start competing head-to-head, offering the same thing. And how are we going to compete mostly? We're going to compete on price. If we think there's only one place, only one way to compete, competition often inevitably kind of falls into just haggling over the price because everybody's trying to offer the best product and trying to offer the best service and trying to offer the best supply chain and so on and so on. There is no best. That's not the reality of competition, and it's not what strategy is all about. Strategy is about being unique. Strategy is about how your company can deliver unique value that other companies are not delivering to the customers you choose to serve. It's impossible to meet every need of every customer. It's impossible. If you try to meet every need of every customer, you will fail. And you will not have any advantage. The essence of strategy is finding a unique value proposition that you can deliver to the customers who you are going to set out to serve. That's the essence of strategy. The worst mistake in strategy is to get into a competition with a competitor on the same thing. If your competitor has spent their energy trying to provide a lot of advice and service with the sale of the product, then it's probably not a very good idea for you to focus all your effort on providing a lot of advice and service with the sale of the product. Find other customers who want something different. Don't get into competing on the same thing. Because if you're competing on the same thing, it's hard for anyone to win. This is kind of the essential starting point of thinking about strategy. The fundamental question each of you has to answer is, do I have a unique value proposition? Am I offering something different to the customers that I really want to serve, that I'm choosing to serve? Am I really offering something really different? What is that? How do I make it better? How do I extend it? How do I deepen it? That's the question fundamentally in strategy. Now, in order to think about strategy, again, all of you, I think, are probably familiar with the basic sort of strategy framework. Strategy consists really, the performance of any business, the profitability of any business is really determined by two things. One is the industry in which you're competing, the nature of that industry and the industry structure. Some industries are very challenging for profitability. Other industries support very high profitability. So part of your performance, part of your profitability is going to be a function of what business you're in. Now, many of you are in multiple businesses. You're a group. You have several business units. When I talk about strategy, I'm going to talk mostly today about the business, because the core level of strategy is the business, the particular business. Okay, and part of your success in each particular business is going to have to do with the industry structure in that business. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the second part of your success, the second part of profitability, is going to be based on your position within that business. And in particular, whether you have a competitive advantage. Because if you have a competitive advantage, you can make more profit than the average company in the industry. So when you're trying to measure your success, the most striking measure of success is, are you more profitable than the average company in the industry? If you are, that's usually a sign that you have some kind of a competitive advantage. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The strategist has to think about both of these things. You have to have a deep understanding of your industry structure, how it's changing, what's driving industry competition, how that's evolving over time. You have to have a deep understanding of that. And hopefully, you can influence the direction of the industry so that the industry becomes more attractive over time as a whole industry. But of course, the other and more classic role of the strategist is to find the best position for your company within the industry so that you can be the most profitable or one of the most profitable companies in that industry. These two things really have to sort of be seen together. Again, each of these topics is an entire book on its own, but I want to kind of give you all some of the high-level ideas, because when we get to shared value later on, we're going to see that it builds off of these core ideas of strategy. Okay. Now, Industry structure, of course, hopefully all of you recognize this picture. When we think about the structure of our business, our industry in which we're competing, whether it's automobiles or retail banking or polyvinyl chloride or a website, Google, in search. In any industry, the way we understand competition is we understand it through these 5 basic competitive forces. They're always at work, but they differ in their nature and their strength across industries. The most obvious competitive force is the nature of the rivalry between the competitors. Some industries, rivalry is very intense, and it's focused on price. Everybody always cuts the price. In those kind of industries, profitability is usually pretty low. In other industries, we have people competing on innovation, on branding, on perception, and in that kind of rivalry, industry profitability can be quite high. Because it's not just a race to the lowest price. So in general, you want to move industry rivalry in your business away from price. You want to move it towards other things that create value for the customer, besides just the lowest price. That may be service, it may be durability, it may be customization, it may be lots of different things. And that's your key choice, is how can you move yourself away from just competing on price, in most cases, and ideally, how could the whole industry move away from that game? Because that game is a hard game to win. But then, of course, this framework says that competition is not just competition with the other companies that are already in the industry. You have to worry about new companies coming in. That's called the threat of new entry. And how hard that is very important to success, because if it's easy to come into the industry, then anytime profits go up, new companies will come in. But if there are barriers to entry, if it's hard to get in the industry, then you can support high profitability. Okay? So that's kind of a second critical force. And one always has to understand who might come into this industry, what are the barriers to entry, and how do I think about that? And then, of course, there's the bargaining power of the customer. If the customer is a very large customer, if the customer buys a lot, if the customer has a lot of bargaining power, then they push down the price. But in other industries, if each individual customer is small, and if the customer doesn't care that much about the price of this particular product that you sell them, they're much more interested in the quality or the style or the image, well, then the customer is not going to push the price down very much. They're not going to have the power. They're not going to be that price sensitive. So the power of the buyer becomes critical. And similarly, the power of the supplier. What are you buying? What are you buying? You're buying raw materials, you're buying machines, you're buying all kinds of things in most of your businesses. You're buying people, the workforce. And you need things from suppliers in order to run your business and build your product. And the question is, do those suppliers have power? Can they just push up the price of what you have to buy? And then you can't maybe very easily pass that increase in price on to your customers. So essentially the suppliers can pull the profitability out of the industry. Okay? So that's a critical competitive force. And of course that's going to differ commodity by commodity or input by input. And what are the implications of this for a manager is, for those things you buy where the supplier has a lot of power, you need to find a way to balance that power somehow. And there are lots of ways to do that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. And then the final competitive force is the substitution. there may not be another competitor that's your major threat that makes the same product you do. But there may be a whole nother way of meeting the same need. And that's the real competitive threat. So for example, if you make metal containers, say cans, metal cans for packaging of stuff. Well, the real competitor may not be another metal can producer. The real competitor may be plastic. Because that's a whole different material and a whole different business that actually may pull demand away from your product or your service. The idea here then is for each of you companies, everybody in this room, for your business, what is the industry structure? What does it look like? Where are the critical threats to profitability? Is it substitution? Is it a powerful customer? Is it low barriers to entry so people are always coming in? Just what is it? How is the industry structure changing? Are buyers getting stronger or weaker? Are suppliers getting stronger or weaker? Are barriers to entry going up or going down? These are critical questions that have to do with the future path of competition in your industry. And you as a good leader have to have insight and understanding into those trends. Because that's going to affect how you choose to position yourself in the industry. If a particular kind of customer is going to get more and more powerful, you may not want to build your strategy around that customer type. You may want to find another customer. It's not going to be so price sensitive. It's not going to have so much clout in pushing down the price. These are the kind of things that strategists think about. And every company in this room has to understand this stuff. If you're going to ultimately achieve your goal, which I assume is to grow and be really, really profitable. And by the way, if you grow and you're really, really profitable, that's going to be a sign that Colombia is getting more competitive. Because you're going to be more competitive in order to do that. And you're going to be able to pay your workers more, and that's going to cause the standard of living to rise. So you can see all this stuff fits together. But it all starts with companies. And the country has a lot riding on each company. To be successful, to be productive, and to have a clear strategy. So it all fits together. Now, in terms of positioning within the industry, again, just some very quick core ideas here that, again, every single company in this room needs to be thinking about. So to be more profitable, to outperform the industry, you've got to achieve one of two things in terms of your positioning in the industry. Number one, you can achieve what we call differentiation. Differentiation is that you're going to set out to deliver kind of a unique benefit to the customer in some way. Your image, your service, your product features, your rapid delivery. There's lots of ways to create value for the customer to differentiate yourself. So one path to superior profitability is differentiation. That allows you, hopefully, to command a higher price than competitors. Because customers are willing to pay for what you do. They're willing to pay more than for the guy who doesn't do it. Okay? Apple is a good example of that. An Apple phone is not cheap. That's not their strategy. Apple, in a lot of ways, is fundamentally a differentiator. They're trying to differentiate a lot of things about their product, their design, their image, all kinds of things. And as a result, they get a very high price premium over, Samsung and the other guys in the industry. Okay? So that's one path. The other path to competitive advantage and superior profitability is to be lower in cost. To find a way to design and produce and deliver your product so that you're the least costly in terms of the costs that you bear. If you can be lower cost, you can make a higher profit even if you get the same price as the competitor. Okay? In fact, if you're really low cost, you can offer a discounted price, a lower price, and still make more profit than the competitor. These are the two broad paths in strategic positioning. You're either on the differentiation path or you're on the cost path. It's very rare that you can stay on both paths. Because in order to deliver unique value to your customer, you usually have to have better features or more service or something like that, which actually means you have to spend extra to deliver that unique value. So it's hard to be on both paths. Once in a while you can. So I guess every one of you in this room, I want to ask you, which path are you on? Are you trying to be unique through differentiation? Are you trying to be unique through being so efficient with best production technology and the most efficient supply chain and the most efficient logistics? What path are you on? And if you can't answer my question, you have a strategy problem. You're just doing what everybody else is doing, and that is not going to allow you to be a superior performer. So what path are you on? Now, in order to understand this question at a deeper level, we now have to introduce, again, some new concepts that are not new in the world, but some people are still learning these concepts. And that next key idea is the notion of the value chain. And the value chain is, the idea says that when you compete in any business, what you're doing is you're operating a value chain. And the value chain is all the activities that you perform in order to compete. Logistics, marketing, sales, design, development, human resource management, that any business competing in an industry is just a value chain. You're taking many actions and steps to ultimately deliver value to your customer. And all strategy is choices you make about how your value chain is going to be different than your competitor's value chain. See? Strategy is really about choices. What customers are you trying to serve? How are you doing service? What's your design look like? How is your supply chain structured? Strategy is a set of choices about how your value chain is going to look differently than other competitors' value chains. Okay? Now, as we think about competitive advantage, though, we've got to pause for a moment and recognize that actually competitive advantage really comes from two different areas. The foundation of competitive advantage is what we call operational effectiveness. As you think about the value chain, for each thing you do, there are certain best practices. So for example, if you're producing a component in a factory, there are best practices in terms of the best machines. that you can buy, out there from the people that make machines. And a best practice is to have the latest modern machine. That's not a strategy question. That's an operational effectiveness question. And as you go through the value chain, the kind of foundation for strategy is you've got to be operationally effective in each thing you do. You've got to use the best practices. You've got to have the good software. You've got to have, organized your marketing with a good website. There's all kinds of best practices. And one of the jobs of every one of you here is to understand what all the best practices are in your industry. Because if you're not operationally effective, if you're not assimilating the best practices, machinery, technology, new ways of doing things, then strategy actually doesn't matter. If you don't have the latest machines, if you're don't have a website, if you don't use kind of supply chain thinking to optimize your logistics, if you're not operationally effective, it doesn't matter what your strategy is. You will fail. Okay, but the theory says that operational effectiveness is not enough to be truly superior. Because if all you're doing is implementing the same best practices as all the competitors are implementing, then it's going to be hard to get an advantage. You might have a small advantage of time. You might install the new machine 3 months faster than the competitor. But the competitor, sooner or later, is going to find that machine. And then you're equal again. What really gives companies sustained success is not just being operationally effective, but it's having a clear strategic position, a unique strategic position. But I want to emphasize you have to do both. Every day you have to wake up and say, if I look out there in the world at companies in my industry and companies in other industries, what's the best way to do purchasing? What's the best way to do logistics? What's the best way to do web development? What's the best way to do everything? And I've got to be raising the bar. And that's making me more productive. And by the way, that's making Colombia more productive. But that's not enough to really be truly successful as a company. We've got to take the next step and say, in addition to that, what am I going to do in order to put myself in a unique position in the industry, where I'm really not just doing the same thing everybody else is? That is a critical idea in strategy. That's perhaps the most critical idea in strategy. Now, just to kind of quickly conclude on strategy, strategy is reflected in a number of basic conditions. I like to call them tests of a strategy. If you have a strategy, you have to meet these tests. Test number one, we've already talked about. If you have to have a strategy, you have to have a unique value proposition for the customer compared to the other companies in the industry. What's a value proposition? It starts with, of all the customers in the industry, which ones are you going to serve? The big ones, the small ones, the rural ones, the urban ones. Which customers are you going to serve? And the second big question is, which needs of those customers are you going to meet? Are you going to try to meet all their needs? Are you going to just meet a certain set of their needs, a subset? Which exact needs are you going to try to be uniquely good at? Are you going to be try to uniquely good? You'll be good on product, you'll be good on delivery, but you'll be unique on service. That's the second question. And then the third question is, what price will you ask? Will you have the same price as the competitors? Will you have you seek a premium, a higher price? Will you offer a discount? Okay, those three questions come together in the value proposition that you offer. Okay? And if we, again, going back to Apple, if we talk about Apple's value proposition, we'd be probably talking about innovative products with unique features and a huge pool of application choices which allow you to actually customize the product to you. Wonderful style and design, and kind of a great image and support. The Apple Store concept. You can go in there and these people help you. And by the way, it's kind of cool to be an Apple customer. And all those things are their unique value proposition. And they get a premium price. And they're highly profitable. Okay? And they're pretty good at continuing to improve those products over time, so they just don't sit still. There's this iPhone, and then the next iPhone, and then the next iPhone, and the next iPhone, and maybe it's hard to make the big leaps, but boy, they're working hard. That's a value proposition. And the question for each of you is, what is your value proposition? Why would a customer want to do business with you? And if the answer is, well, they've always done business with me, or if the answer is, oh, I'm a nice guy, you don't have a strategy. You're just out there, just trying to keep up every day and do a little better. And that's fine, but that's not going to make you rich and famous. And it's not going to make Colombia more competitive. The better your strategies, the more competitive Colombia is going to be. One of the reasons why the U.S. is so competitive is we got a lot of companies with really interesting strategies. They're not just copying, they're not just competing on the lowest price. See that? It's all connected. I go to some countries and the government leaders and the business leaders fight with each other. And when I see that, I always say, oh my, that's so sad. Because the government leaders can't succeed without great businesses who are strategic and productive and efficient and innovative. And the business leaders can't succeed unless government does their job and gets the business environment right. How could we be fighting? And that's because a lot of people don't understand what we're talking about here. They have a very simplistic view of what an economy is about and what success is about and what competitiveness really means. But we don't have a simplistic view here in this country, and we're getting better, and we're going to get better still. In terms of the test of a strategy, we need a distinctive value chain. We can't just be doing everything that the competitor's doing the same way. Marketing the same way, providing service the same way, delivering our product the same. If we're doing everything the same as the competitor, we don't have a strategy. We're just competing on operational excellence or operational effectiveness. Who can do the same thing a little bit better? A strategy is around choices about how we're going to do it this way and not that way. Because we're trying to deliver this value, not that value. It's not that other value is bad. Again, there's no one best way to compete. It doesn't exist. Don't ever think that you're the best. Because if you do, you have a mental illness. You're not the best. You may be the best at delivering a certain kind of value to a certain kind of customer. That's the right question of strategy. You'll never be the best at meeting every need of every customer. And if you try, you probably will end up without a strategy and not ultimately very successful.